Cole didn't remember how they got out of the ballroom. One moment there had been chandeliers, reporters, the weight of 100 stairs as his mother's confession echoed in the air. The next, he was in the back of the town car with Amelia, city lights streaking past the windows like comets. Neither of them spoke. She sat pressed against the opposite door, still in that deep green dress that made her look like someone he didn't deserve. Elegant, fierce, heartbreakingly out of his league. Her hands were clasped together so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Amelia. His voice came out rough. She flinched, eyes still on the glass. Don't. Please. The word sliced straight through him. He swallowed, fingers curling uselessly against his knees. You heard what my mother said. You were never supposed to take the blame. I didn't know. That doesn't change what happened, she whispered. Outside, Manhattan rushed by, all glass and noise, and nothing that mattered. You lost your job because of my family, he said. You almost lost your license, your reputation. I lost myself, Cole. She finally looked at him then, eyes glossy but hard. For 2 years, I thought I'd failed my patient. I carried that with me on every shift, every call. I changed how I practiced. I second-guessed everything. Do you know how that feels for a medic? He didn't, but God, he wished he could take it from her. Amelia, if I had known. You didn't want to know. The words were soft, not cruel, but they landed like blows. You kept your distance. You let everyone talk around it. It was easier to believe I messed up. He had no defense. He remembered the hospital corridor, the crash of the gurney through the doors, her voice shouting orders while he bled out on the table. Then the blur of weeks afterward when his father controlled everything. The press statements, the lawyers, the narrative. I was a coward, he said. For once, he didn't dress it up. Didn't hide the rot behind a polished Harrington mask. The truth sat raw between them. The car slowed at a red light. In the glow from the street lamps, he could see how tired she looked, how much weight she'd been carrying alone. I can't fix what they did to you, he said quietly. But I can make sure it's known. Publicly. I can clear your name, fund an investigation, pay whatever it costs. This isn't about money. I know. His throat tightened. It's about you walking into a hospital and not seeing my face on every board, every wing. It's about you not hearing my last name and wondering what it's going to cost you this time. Her jaw worked once. You can't change that you're a Harrington. No. He leaned forward, trying to catch her gaze. But I can choose what it means from now on. The light turned green. The car eased back into motion. She exhaled slowly, shoulders dropping just a fraction. Where are we going? Anywhere but the penthouse, he said. Unless you want to go home. I'll tell the driver to turn around. She hesitated, then shook her head. No. If I go home now, I'll just replay everything. My place then. We can talk without cameras, without my mother. The last words tasted bitter. After a beat, she nodded. When they stepped out onto the private drive in front of his building, the night air was cold enough to sting. Cole shrugged off his jacket without thinking and draped it around her bare shoulders. She stiffened beneath the fabric. You don't have to. I know, he said. I want to. For a second, her eyes searched for him, as if trying to decide whether to believe that. Then she pulled the lapels closer and followed him inside. The private elevator ride felt longer than the drive over. The doors opened into the quiet expanse of the penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows. City spread below, like a constellation he couldn't read. Art on the walls that he'd never really seen. None of it felt like home. Not tonight. Water? Coffee? Something stronger? He asked, heading to the kitchen just to have something to do with his hands. Water's fine, she said, hovering near the edge of the living room, like someone who expected to be told she didn't belong. He grabbed 2 bottles from the fridge and handed her one. Their fingers brushed, a small, stupid spark that still made his pulse jump. "Sit," he said. She did, perched on the very edge of the leather sofa. He took the armchair across from her so he wouldn't be tempted to close the distance. "For what it's worth," he began, "I didn't invite the press tonight. That was my mother. She wanted a spectacle." "She got one," Amelia murmured. He huffed a humorless laugh. "That she did." They sat in silence for a moment, the city noise faint through the glass. "You said earlier that the truth changed everything," she said finally. "Did it? For you?" He thought about the first time he'd seen her again, in that hospital hallway after the car crash. The way his heart had kicked like it recognized something his head had buried. The night since, lying awake, replaying every moment with her. The way she pushed him to be better without even trying. "Yes," he said. "It did. Because I realized the story I've been telling myself for 2 years is a lie." "What story is that?" "That you were just a medic who happened to save my life." He looked at her fully now. "You weren't. You're the reason I'm still here. You're the reason I ever questioned my family. You're the only person who's looked me in the eye and said the things everyone else is afraid to say." She swallowed hard. "I told myself keeping my distance was protecting you," he went on. "That if I stayed out of your life, my father couldn't use you as leverage. But all I did was leave you alone in the fallout he created." "You didn't sign those papers," she said quietly. "You didn't tell them to blame me." "No," he agreed. "But I benefited from it. I let them protect the Harrington name while yours burned." The words twisted something in his chest, but he didn't look away. "I'm sorry, Amelia. Not the kind of sorry you say to get forgiveness. The kind that means I'm going to do something about it." She watched him, eyes searching. What does "do something" look like? He'd been thinking about that since the moment his mother's voice echoed through the ballroom speakers. "It means a press conference in the morning," he said. "Me, not my mother. I'll tell them the truth about the night of the accident, about the settlement my father forced that family to sign, about the board member he paid off to make the complaint against you stick." Her eyes widened. "Cole, if you go after them publicly, they'll go after you twice as hard. Your shares, your position, I don't care anymore." "You say that now," she said, shaking her head. "But this is your life, your company." He thought of the Harrington logo etched into every glass in his office, the way it had always felt like a brand instead of a name. "Maybe it's time my life stopped being about what my father built," he said. "Maybe it's time for what I can live with." She looked at him for a long moment, something wary and fragile in her expression. "And what about me in all of this?" "You get to choose," he said. "If you want distance, I'll give it to you. I'll still clear your name, still fund whatever legal support you need, still—" "Stop," she said softly. "Just stop making promises like I'm not in the room." He blinked. "What?" "You keep deciding things for me," she said. "Back then, you decided staying away was better for me. Now you're deciding blowing up your life is what I need. Did you ever think to ask what I actually want?" The question hit him like a slap. "No," he admitted. "I didn't. What do you want, Amelia?" Her fingers twisted around the water bottle label. She stared at it for a beat, then lifted her head. "I want the truth on record," she said. "I want my name off that complaint. I want to walk into a hospital and not feel like a shadow version of myself. I want to do the job I love without your family hanging over every decision." "I can do that," he said immediately. "And—" her voice softened, the edges fraying. "I want to stop pretending I don't feel anything when I look at you." His heart stuttered. "But I also don't know how to trust that this isn't just guilt," she finished. Or some dramatic Harrington redemption arc where I'm the girl who helped you discover your conscience. He almost laughed at how brutally accurate that sounded. That's not what this is, he said. I'm not doing this to feel better about myself. I'm doing it because the thought of you carrying this alone for another day makes me sick. And because... He broke off, the words lodged in his throat. Because what? She pushed. He stood suddenly, energy crackling under his skin. If he sat still, he was going to combust. He paced to the window, palms pressed to the cool glass. The city spread out below like a challenge. He'd faced boardrooms, hostile takeovers, media storms. Nothing had ever terrified him as much as what he was about to say. Because I'm in love with you, he said quietly. The silence behind him felt like a held breath. He let it sit there, real and unfixable, then turned around. Amelia was staring at him, lips parted, eyes wide. The bottled water had slipped from her hands onto the couch, forgotten. You don't have to say anything, he added quickly. I know it's unfair to dump that on you tonight. But I promised myself if we ever got to this point, if the truth ever came out, I wasn't going to hide anymore. He crossed back to the sofa, stopping a careful distance away. I fell in love with you the night you leaned over my gurney and told me not to die just because some rich guy thought his money made him invincible, he said. I just didn't realize it until you walked back into my life and looked at me like I was a person instead of a last name. Her eyes shimmered. Cole, I don't expect you to trust me right away, he said. Maybe you never will. But I need you to know that what I feel for you isn't about obligation or gratitude. It's the only part of my life that feels like it's actually mine. For a long moment, the only sound was the faint hum of the city. Then Amelia stood. For one terrifying heartbeat, he thought she was going to walk past him and head for the elevator. Instead, she stepped closer. So close he could see the tiny flecks of gold in her eyes. You're right, she said softly. I don't know if I trust you yet. His chest clenched. But I believe you, she added. He stared at her. You do? I've heard you lie, she said. To reporters, to board members, to your mother. When you lie, your voice gets smooth. Your shoulders go back like you're putting on armor. Right now you look like someone ripped your armor off and threw it out the window. Despite everything, a shaky breath of laughter escaped him. That's accurate. She searched his face for another long second, then nodded to herself, like she'd come to some internal decision. Okay, she said. Here's what I want, Cole. I want you to tell the truth tomorrow. Not for me, for you. Because you're right. You can't live like this anymore. And then, she continued, overriding him gently. I want time to see what you do when there aren't cameras, when the adrenaline wears off, when it's just you and the consequences of choosing me over them. His throat tightened. You're asking me to prove it. I'm asking you to live it, she corrected. If you can do that, then maybe I'll be ready to figure out what being in love with a Harrington looks like. The words slipped out of her mouth before she seemed to realize what she'd said. His heart slammed to a stop. You're in love with me? Color flooded her cheeks. I didn't... That's not... Amelia. She exhaled, defeated. Yeah, she whispered. I am. And that's what scares me most. He stepped closer, close enough to feel the warmth of her. I'm scared too, he said. But I'd rather be terrified with you than safe in the lie I've been living. Her eyes searched his, then dropped to his mouth, then back up. Then don't make me regret giving you this chance, she said. He lifted a hand slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, and brushed a curl behind her ear. Her breath hitched, but she didn't move. I won't, he promised. For the first time that night, He actually believed it. He had no idea how they were going to untangle the mess his family had made, or the ways he'd helped make it worse. All he knew was that tomorrow he would walk into the one place Harringtons never did, a room full of cameras without a script. And he would tell the world the truth, for her, for himself, for the life he wanted, even if he had to burn the old one down to get it. He didn't sleep. He tried. After Amelia left, after one last quiet look at him in the doorway, her fingers brushing his as he handed her his jacket back, he stood at the window for a long time, watching the city move like nothing had shifted. But everything had. He poured a drink, then didn't touch it. Opened his laptop, then couldn't see the screen through the haze of adrenaline and dread. By 4 a.m, he'd showered twice and changed shirts 3 times. By 6, Lucas was pounding on his door. "Open up unless you've already skipped town," his friend called through the wood. Cole pulled it open. Lucas took one look at him and whistled. "Wow, you look like you got hit by a moral crisis truck." "I'm holding a press conference," Cole said, skipping the banter. "In related news, I know," Lucas replied, stepping inside. "Your mother called at 5:30. She used my full name. That's never a good sign." Cole winced. "What did she say?" "Something about you being reckless, ungrateful, and possibly possessed." Lucas shoved his hands in his pockets. "She told me to talk sense into you." "And are you going to?" Lucas studied him for a long second. "No." Relief loosened something in his chest he hadn't realized was clenched. "Good," Cole said. "I am, however," Lucas continued, "going to tell you that the second you step in front of those cameras, there's no going back. Stocks will tank. Lawyers will drool. Your father will rise from the grave purely out of spite." "I know." "And you're sure this is about more than a girl?" "It's about the person she made me realize I want to be," Cole said simply. Lucas stared at him, then nodded slowly. "All right then. Let's burn it down." The Harrington Global lobby didn't usually smell like fear. Today it did. Reporters packed the space. Cameras set up in a tight cluster in front of the podium. Security tried to look like they weren't nervous. Assistants hovered on the periphery, phones buzzing constantly. Margaret Harrington stood near the back, her cream suit replaced with a more somber navy. Her arms were crossed, lips pressed into a line so thin it practically disappeared. When Cole appeared at the top of the stairs with Lucas at his side, the room reacted like someone had thrown a match. The chatter swelled. "Mr. Harrington, is it true?" "Cole, is the board forcing you to?" "Can you comment on the allegations?" He descended the steps calmly, despite the way his pulse hammered. The words he'd rehearsed all night pressed against his teeth. Amelia watched all of it from the shadow of a pillar near the edge of the room. She hadn't planned to come. It felt too exposed, standing in the heart of his world on a day when he was about to strip it down to the studs. But when she'd gotten the anonymous text from an unknown number, "You might want to see this in person." Jay, she'd known. Jenna, of course. So she'd swapped her usual Navy uniform for black slacks and a simple blouse, clipped her EMS badge to her belt, and slipped into the crowd like she had every right to be there. Cole stepped up to the podium. The flash of cameras flickered off the marble, harsh and relentless. He adjusted the mic. For a second, his gaze swept the room, past the cameras, past the shareholders, past his mother's glacial stare. It found her, just for a heartbeat. Her lungs remembered how to work. Then he looked straight into the lights. "Good morning," he said. "My name is Cole Harrington. You've all heard it before. Articles, headlines, mostly attached to numbers." A humorless smile ghosted over his mouth. "Today isn't about numbers." The room quieted. 2 years ago, he continued, a woman died after complications from surgery at a hospital. My family funds. Her name was Claire Reynolds. She was a mother, a teacher, A person who deserved better than to be a footnote in a legal file. The drop of her name rippled through the crowd. My father, in an effort to protect the Harrington reputation, pressured her grieving family into signing a settlement agreement, Cole said. The narrative that emerged from that night suggested that the paramedic who brought her in, Amelia Brooks, had mishandled her care. Amelia's stomach turned over at hearing her name pronounced so clearly into the microphone. For 2 years, Cole went on, voice steady, Amelia carried that stain. She questioned every choice, every step, every call. Meanwhile, my family benefited from the story that she had made a mistake, instead of acknowledging the failures in the system we funded. He didn't look in her direction now. He didn't have to. Every word landed like a hand bracing her. A review of the case, not the one my lawyers commissioned then, but an independent one I ordered last week, has confirmed that Amelia Brooks did everything right that night. She was not at fault for Claire Reynolds' death. Claire's complications were the result of delayed surgical intervention and internal policies that prioritized liability over urgency. An angry murmur went up among the press. Cole let it crest, then continued. My father is no longer here to answer for those choices, he said quietly, but I am. And hiding behind legal language and old money doesn't absolve me of the fact that I have benefited from the system he built. Margaret's jaw clenched visibly. I am here today to say, on the record, that Harrington Global will be funding a full transparent review of all malpractice settlements tied to our name in the last decade. We will cooperate with regulators. We will release families from NDAs if they choose to come forward. A flash brighter than the rest nearly blinded him. Questions erupted, overlapping. He raised a hand. One more thing, he said, to Amelia Brooks specifically. Amelia's heart tripped. I am sorry, he said, and this time his voice wasn't the polished baritone she'd heard in news clips. It was the one from her ambulance. Rough. Humans. I am sorry that my silence allowed others to doubt your skill. I am sorry that I did not speak up sooner. Your name should never have been attached to failure, because the truth is, there are people walking around this city right now solely because you refused to give up on them. The room was so quiet, she could hear someone's phone buzzing unanswered. For what it's worth, he finished. I am one of them. The words hung in the air. Then chaos. Mr. Harrington, are you resigning? Did your mother know? How will this affect? The questions blurred. Cole stepped back from the mic, a barely perceptible tremor in his hands. Lucas touched his elbow briefly, guiding him away from the podium. Margaret moved to intercept him halfway up the steps, her heels clicking like a metronome of disapproval. What have you done? She hissed, low enough that only he, and, unfortunately, one nosy reporter close by, could hear. What I should have done 2 years ago, he replied. You've opened us up to litigation, to scandal, to accountability, he cut in. If that destroys us, maybe we need to be destroyed. Her eyes flashed. All for some girl? He glanced over her shoulder. His mother followed his gaze. Amelia stood a few yards away, caught mid-turn like a deer in headlights. She hadn't meant to be that close. She'd started to leave, heart pounding too hard, when one of the cameras had swung her way and she'd frozen. Margaret's mouth tightened. Of course. She is not the scandal here, Cole said evenly. We are. We? She repeated. Speak for yourself. I am, he said, for the first time. He stepped around her, heading toward Amelia. The crowd shifted, sensing something worth capturing. Amelia fought the urge to bolt. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could see the exhaustion etched under his eyes. You came, he said softly. I wasn't sure I should, she admitted. I'm glad you did. Silence stretched between them, oddly intimate despite the cameras, the murmuring press, the weight of his family name hanging in the air. "You just blew up your world," she said quietly. "For this." "For the truth," he corrected. Then lower. "For a chance at something real." A reporter called his name loudly. He ignored it. "What happens now?" she asked. "I get screamed at by lawyers," he said dryly. "The board panics. Our PR team works overtime. My mother won't speak to me for a while." "That doesn't scare you?" He thought about it. "Yeah," he said honestly. "It does. But losing myself scares me more." Her chest squeezed. "And me?" she asked before she could stop herself. "Where do I fall in your little apocalypse plan?" He held her gaze. No flinching. No masks. "Standing beside me," he said. "If you still want to." The words weren't a demand. They were an invitation. She searched his face, looking for hesitation, for the kind of calculation she was used to seeing in powerful men. She didn't find it. Instead, she saw the guy who had sat on her gurney and cracked bad jokes about hospital food. The one who'd shown up in her ER just to make sure a construction worker made it through the night. The one who'd toasted a room full of strangers, in her honor without ever saying her name. She saw the man she'd already fallen for, whether she'd wanted to or not. "Okay," she said softly. His brows drew together. "Okay. If I'm doing this," she said, squaring her shoulders, "I'm not doing it halfway. We walk into the mess together, and I reserve the right to tell you when you're being an idiot." A startled laugh burst out of him, tension cracking like thin ice. "I'd be disappointed if you didn't." He held out his hand. She looked at it for a heartbeat, then slid her fingers into his. Flashbulbs exploded like fireworks. For once, she didn't care. Time, it turned out, didn't stop just because a billionaire detonated his own legacy. The world didn't end. Harrington Global's stock dipped hard, then steadied as statements rolled out. Plans were outlined, and investors realized the company was not, in fact, spontaneously combusting. Lawsuits were filed. Old cases reopened. Some people called Cole brave. Others called him reckless. He stopped reading the commentary after day 3. What he didn't stop doing was showing up. For meetings with regulators. For tense, exhausting board sessions. For the boy he'd been, shaped by his father's shadow. The man who'd once let a medic take the fall for something she had no control over because speaking up would have been inconvenient. He looked at the woman beside him now, the one whose steady hands had brought him back from the edge, whose stubborn heart had forced him to confront his own. "Yeah," he said. "I'm sure." She studied him, then nodded, as if something inside her finally settled. "Okay," she said. He squeezed her hand. They sat there for a while, watching a chef on TV dramatically fail to flip an omelet. Amelia snorted. "That's going to be you next time you try to cook." He gasped. "Wow, disrespect." "You know I'm right." He considered her profile, beautiful even in the soft glow of the screen, and thought that if this was what the long run looked like, shared laughter, hard conversations, messy days, quiet nights, he wanted all of it. With her. Months later, a new plaque appeared in the ER waiting room of one of the city's busiest hospitals, Harrington Emergency Response Initiative. In honor of the paramedics, EMTs, nurses, and first responders who show up on our worst days. Sponsored by the Harrington Foundation. Directed by Chief Consultant, Paramedic Amelia Brooks. Amelia stared at her name in the etched metal and shook her head. "This still feels unreal," she muttered. Captain Ruiz grunted. "Better get used to it. You're the one who let them rope you into advising this circus." "Advocating," she corrected. "We're getting 3 new rigs, upgraded radios, and actual mental health support for crews. I'll take the circus." He gave a rare, faint smile. "You did good, Brooks." "We did," she said. "All of us." He nodded once and walked away. A familiar arm slid around her waist. "Look at you," Cole murmured, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Your name on a wall. Fancy title. People actually listen when you speak." She smirked. "Wild, right? Next thing you know, someone might put your name on a building." "Very funny." He squeezed her gently. "They should have done this years ago." "Well," she said, leaning back against him, "we can't change what didn't happen. Just what comes next." "And what comes next?" he asked. She turned her head, eyes sparkling. "Coffee, a nap, me beating you at that stupid card game you swear you're good at." "Rude," he said. "Also, false. I am excellent at that game." She laughed. A paramedic crew rushed through the doors, pushing a stretcher, calling out vitals. Amelia straightened automatically, watching their movements, assessing without thinking. One of the younger medics caught her eye and gave a quick, nervous nod of acknowledgement. She nodded back, offering a small, grounding smile. Cole felt the way her body shifted gears beside him, still, focused, ready. "You miss it," he observed quietly. "I haven't gone anywhere," she said. He knew what she meant. She was still on the schedule, still pulling shifts, still climbing into the back of ambulances when tones dropped. The new title hadn't changed who she was. He loved her for that more than anything. "Come on," she said after a moment, threading her fingers through his. "If we leave now, we can actually have one quiet hour before the city starts complaining again." "As long as you promise not to critique my driving," he said as they headed for the doors. "No promises," she replied. He laughed, letting her pull him out into the bright afternoon. The city hummed around them, full of crises and miracles and all the messy, beautiful in between. For years, it had felt like a weight pressing down on his chest. Now, with her hand in his, it felt like a possibility. He'd lost a legacy when he'd chosen the truth. In its place, he'd found something better. A life that was his. A love that was real. A future he was no longer afraid to claim. And as they stepped out into the noise and light and unpredictable chaos of the world they were rebuilding together, Cole knew one thing with absolute clarity. He would never again let fear be louder than the love that had brought him back to her. Not on her watch. Not on his. Not anymore. If this story touched you, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe so you never miss the next series. Your support keeps these stories alive and helps more people find them.